We'll make a start for this week's Chamber Live event. It's great to see, again, a good packed 30 minutes coming up. We're going to hear a little bit around some of the latest services and benefits that are coming out of our trade team from Susanna and Pauline. We've then got a hospitality panel. We've focused on this over the last couple of weeks, really, as things have begun to open up again. And we've got a hospitality panel of Kirsty Walton, Jess Southworth and Thomas Mornier, who's going to be asking a series of questions over where things are, what they see happening and some of their experiences, really, in a sector that's certainly grabbing quite a bit of attention. And speaking about grabbing attention, we're going to finish off today with a quick chat with Subra from Policy and Research team over what could be going on and what may happen should there be local lockdowns. We've seen a lot of news coming out from Oldham at the present moment in time, and that may be causing a few people some concern as well. There's certainly a different tone to some of the news that we're hearing at the present moment in time. So what might that look like, and what might the impact be on the local economy should we have to impose a local lockdown? But we'll get on to that in due course over the next 30 minutes. So thanks very much for everyone joining us. Just to re-emphasise, we are recording this and we will be putting out the video on our YouTube channel and also lifting the audio as well and putting that out on a podcast as well in the next 24 hours. So if you know people that would want to find out something that we talk about today, please let them know. Please send them the links through when you get them and encourage them to join us next week. Anyway, first of all, without any more ado, I'd like to ask Susanna and Pauline to join us from our trade team. We've heard from them a lot over the last few weeks. And in the last few weeks, the government's launched its new campaign, Check, Change and Go, which is all about giving companies information and guidance on how to prepare for the end of the transition period. Don't forget, we've still got Brexit. The transition period is coming to the end on the 31st of December. That will happen. So what's the team doing these days to help companies understand some of the inevitable changes that are coming up? So Pauline, over to you.
Hi, Chris. So from next Thursday, we're launching a series of pre-international trade masterclasses. So these will take place every 2 weeks, and they'll give a basic understanding of some key areas of international trade. So we want to make sure that companies understand all the processes involved in doing international trade, so both export and import. So for example, next week, our first session, we will be looking at the export process. So all the way from when a UK company receives an order to agreeing the terms of sales, arranging the paperwork, and getting the customer the goods to the customer. So we'll also be looking at the key changes coming up with Brexit, as you mentioned. The session after that will be focusing on Brexit and all the main changes that will affect international trade. So we have sessions booked until mid-October. We'll be covering risks, authorized economic operator status, the import processes, and also export documentation changes post-transition period. So we announced them last week, and we've already got over 150 delegates, so they've proven very popular. We've got still a week to go until the first session, so I'll put the link in the chat now if anyone wants to join us on that session next week. We have another event focusing on the changes with the border, but I'll pass over to Susanna to tell you more about that one.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Pauline. So yes, we are also working with the British Chambers of Commerce and other northern chambers from Edinburgh to the northeast. We have joined forces to bring Liam Smith from the BCC, the Director of Trade Facilitation. He will be talking to companies about some of the key changes and the impact of the new UK border control, which obviously is going to have a direct impact on exporters and importers. This is a free webinar. We already have about 30 delegates registered from Greater Manchester Chamber, and it's going to take place on the 11th of August at 10 a.m. So I'll also add the link on the chat for anybody who wants to join us.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Susanna. And one of the things we have got in the chamber really is an extensive global business network. We make a lot about this, don't we? And it's quite an important part of it, the links that we've already got. But we've been working hard, haven't we, over the last couple of months? You've been working hard as well. We've got some news to share about some latest developments as regards our connections overseas as well.
Yeah, so obviously as part of this, the impact of COVID and all that, we wanted to make sure that we're working on initiatives that are more tangible in terms of the way we can support businesses. So I'm very pleased to announce that we are launching a Meet the Buyer online series So our first one is taking place on the 2nd of September, and this will be with our Chilean partners. We'll have one of the largest importers and wholesalers in the region looking for homeware related products. And we're going to have a webinar alongside one-to-one meetings with the buyer. So this is very exciting. And after that, we also secured 3 buyers from Malaysia. Again, and this is going to be a one-to-one opportunity to pitch their products to them. And they are basically looking for food and drink products and also some homeware related. So very exciting. We'll add more sessions as we can secure more buyers from overseas.
Okay, that's brilliant. And it's so important that, again, you know, everyone's got into using virtual networking or one thing or another. Well, when you're looking at overseas markets, the time really has come, because in the past we've done a lot of these as physical events, but now I suppose in the world that everyone's using Zoom and Teams and other things, it's an awful lot easier to do that. It's probably more important that we're doing that as well at this time as well, just to make sure that we're maximising every single opportunity. So some really good opportunities there for people looking to get into exporting, or maybe it's something that you already do, but just wanting to make sure you're staying ahead of what's coming up potentially at the end of the year. So a whole range of opportunities there. And again, a quick reminder, those links are in the chat box at the side there. And if anybody's got any questions about anything you're hearing today, please put them in there and we'll get around to them as soon as we possibly can. But thank you very much, Susanna. Thank you very much, Pauline. Always some great stuff going on with our international trade team there. The next bit we're going to move on to now is again this continuing look that we've had over the last couple of weeks with the hospitality sector. We've heard from a couple of people individually, but today we've got a panel of speakers together. We've got Kirsty Walton and Jess Southworth. Kirsty Walton is the sales manager at Stock Exchange, and Jess is the BDM, business development manager at Hotel Football. We're also joined by Tomasz Marnia, who's the MD at Fazenda. Kirsty and Jess are sharing a screen. So we'll start with you first, Kirsty and Jess, and just some sort of general questions, I suppose, really. I can almost sort of second guess what the answer is going to be, but what have the last few months been like? Because I think anybody that's not in the sector and in the trade has probably got their own idea of what's been going on. But from your perspective, and yours as well, Jess, what's the last few months been like?
Do you want to start? Don't mind. Okay. I mean, I'm going to say it's been, I feel like we're on a strange journey, but definitely the past few months, one minute you felt a bit lost. I think I did a little piece on LinkedIn about the grief cycle, and I really felt it. And I had to kind of write, I got to a point where I had to write everything down, how I was feeling, and it sounds really dramatic. But yeah, well, definitely the first 4 weeks, I was a bit like, I feel like I've lost something. And it was a simple fact of having a bit of a purpose every day to go in. Hospitality is all about people. You'd kind of lost that connectivity. But then with me directly, I was then, my husband continued work, and I was kind of then at home with 2 children as well. So I was trying to keep my head in the game of what's going on. And then all of a sudden I'm a teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a lot.
Home teaching, that's a lot to contend with. What about yourself, Kirsty? What's that sort of last few months, you know, in summary, really?
Yeah, very similar to Jess, really. I suppose our industry is all about bringing people together and it being lively, and you know, all about the hustle and bustle of having people together, creating that atmosphere. The busier, the better. The more people, the better. The louder, the better. The more drink, the more food, the better. And that just came to such a grinding halt. Specifically for Stock Exchange, we'd only opened our doors in November, so we had a very short run of being open, and we're finally getting into the swing of things. And then obviously the decision was made. We actually made the company announcement that would be closing just before lockdown was announced. So on the Thursday, the announcement went out to everyone that works for both properties, Hotel Football and Stock Exchange, that we would close both hotels to the public, that our staff would be furloughed, and that we would open up to NHS professionals. So, I mean, then the fun started really in terms of the properties. So we spent the next few days getting those properties ready for the NHS professionals to move in. And it's getting used to seeing, so the company had been great in terms of keeping everyone engaged and, you know, daily updates, and you can log in whenever you want, have a look what's going on site. And I think seeing the change in what we were used to before to then the new normal, dare I say it.
It's almost in a way that the way kind of we had, it sounds silly, but like a bit of a lifeline. Kind of, you've kind of taken the bad news and how you feel, and then you can sort of spin it, because you think, well, actually, we're doing something that's been really well received. We've been able to help, and it almost made it feel that little bit better. Kind of, we knew that we were protected by the company with our pay up until the first few months. So we knew you could kind of put that kind of anxiety to one side. We were all covered, we were all protected, and then you could focus on doing something probably felt a bit meaningful, because you used to be able to people, but you knew that these people really needed you.
Yeah, and you were sort of left. It's a bit like you said. It's a bit of that grief process, isn't it? So you feel like you've lost something that it's very difficult to say what it is. Thomas, I just want to bring you in now, and obviously as a restaurant in the centre of the city, I suppose really again the last few months you felt that sort of sense of loss, really, in a way that you're missing something, and obviously, you know, what's been your experience over the last few months?
Hello, everybody. Yes, it has been very, very difficult, as the ladies here have just mentioned. There is always that side of you know, you're used to doing things one way, and then I think it affected everybody in a way. Yeah, we had to stop, and having closed restaurants is very sad, because you go to a restaurant and it's a closed environment, it's full of life. It's sad to go to a place that is closed. But I have to admit that it's been a lot harder than what it sounds from at least my side. You know, making sure that the company survives, making sure that we've got the funds, making sure that we're running a business that has a future. Obviously, you know, banks, landlords, negotiations. I must admit, I think the last 4 months have been the hardest months of my life. And believe me, opening a restaurant from scratch is very, very hard. This has been absolutely unbelievable from my end, and then because you've got the responsibility of 400 families over your shoulders, you know, you want to make sure that you don't have to make redundancies. You want to make sure that, which unfortunately we will have to. I am very aware that everybody thinks that see the restaurants opening now and everything looks, oh great, the restaurants are opening. It is not the way that people think. People read the news and they think that the news is all, you know, looking great out there. Pubs, and you see the pictures of a group of people in London in front of a pub. Oh, look at that, it's absolutely rammed. That's not the reality, really. You know, the reality is very, very different. The reality is that all the friends that I've got in the industry, all the MDs are really still, you know, stressed and suffering at the moment. The numbers that they're putting on the table, they are not great numbers, and no one is really doing great numbers. So it is difficult. Opening back is always hard because fears. We must admit that this flexible furlough has helped a lot the industry. Again, making sure that people have a job to come back is obviously important, but even when the furlough finishes in October, God knows how it's going to look like. You know, you look at what's going on at the moment in Europe, and I was on my way here home because I was in a meeting in head office, and I could just listening to what the fears that the government is already putting in place, because you can see that they went from 7 to 10 days. They're scared of a second lockdown. You were mentioning earlier, Chris, you know, these localized lockdowns, potential solutions for handling the problem. That can be a big problem for an industry like ours. And I think the government is seeing that. They are really doing a lot of things for our industry.
Do you think you've had enough support from government? Because I know, certainly just going on the furlough, there's more and more calls now from the point of view of, you know, really channeling the furlough into the industries that need it. You know, if you're not bringing the money in, then how on earth are you supposed to pay your staff when furlough ends? And that's the big problem, isn't it? Do you think you've had enough support from government?
I was laughing at the moment that you said the word enough the first time. The second time again, but enough is very difficult to measure, really, Chris. You know, the day that the government came up with the furlough was a Friday. We had already closed the restaurants before that. We were already thinking that we were going to have to find a way to survive and to make sure that, you know, I already started thinking, oh God, I have to make everybody redundant straight away. Because in my mind, I knew it wasn't going to be a month thing. And I never thought it was going to be until the end of June. I knew it. The moment that we went down that path, I could see it happening. So I was already making a long-term plan in a way, yeah? So when the furlough came, it was, oh my God, this is savior. And it has been a savior. And I think even this flexible thing, it is really a savior for our industry. However, there's one aspect, and I'm just saying this, I don't know how many of the people joining us today or listening to this afterwards are landlords. Obviously, the landlords are also suffering. Everybody's suffering. No one can raise their hand. Well, very few people can raise their hand and say, you know what, this pandemic has been great for us. But I do believe that there's one big area that the government has not had the, I'm going to be very, very bad saying these words, but the balls to jump into, and that has been the relationship between tenants and landlords. I think there's a big gap there. People don't know how big the rents are in city centers. You mentioned that before, you know, how are city centers versus suburbs. I know for a fact, because everybody I speak to on a regular basis, that city centers are being more affected by the pandemic in every sense. So the restaurants that have opened, pubs and restaurants that have opened in suburbs are doing much better than city center ones because there's no one going to city centers. But the cost of the rents in city centers is 10 times, even 20 times more than those suburbs.
And I think that's something that's come out. You know, there are these areas where things don't quite match up or join or whatever. Kirsty and Jess, just want to bring you in on that point as well, from the point of view of the level of support that the sector's had. I mean, obviously, there's been some fantastic work being done, as you mentioned, with the NHS, and a lot of very, very good things are going on like that. But overall in the sector, both of you, do you feel that there's been enough support, and also looking forward over the next few months, which, you know, it's the picture isn't clear at all over where that's going to go. So how do you see things playing out over the next 3 or 4 months?
I think from myself at Hotel Football, I think the next few months are what bother me the most, because there's a lot of uncertainty kind of in and around. We've talked about potential second wave, local lockdowns, etc. For a property like ours, we're not in the city centre, but we sit opposite a huge stadium that we all are very familiar with. And that drives a lot of our footfall, a lot of our revenue. And if, depending on how long it potentially can take, we've heard kind of reduced capacity, social distancing will be fine, like it'll be fine after so many months. Depending on what happens is a massive key to how we survive. Don't get me wrong, you know, we sit on the industrial park as well, which is fine, but a massive portion of our revenue does come from the attraction of football. So the next few months concern me a lot. I think originally with the government, for me, we started to see horror stories of other colleagues in the city from, you know, other hotels, etc., and they were really hit hard. And I do think the furlough came too late. As you say, you know, we were already planning to close before it even came into play. We were just very fortunate. Our owners wanted to protect us before that even came into consideration. So yeah, I think it was definitely too late. I think the actual scheme itself, it's obviously been a saviour, but for Hotel Football, definitely moving forward, that's where my concern lies.
Yeah, and of course you're coming up to traditionally the busy time as well, and obviously the football season, well, will be starting, but would have been starting next month in August, wouldn't it? And everything else. And of course, you just had a couple of test matches just down the road as well, haven't you? The cricket ground, and they've obviously been played behind closed doors as well. So you miss a little bit of that traffic as well. And that's the immediate impact, isn't it? That is there. Kirsty, from your point of view, what do you see again going forward? You know, over the next few months? Where do you see going? Is it about just getting more people back into the city centres, into the town centres, or is it a bit more fundamental than that?
Yeah, I mean, we always knew that the next few months were going to be the most difficult. Almost, I don't mean it was easy to close, of course it wasn't, but once that decision was made, it was very easy to put plans in place and know exactly what you were dealing with. Now what we're having to deal with is not knowing what occupancy levels are going to be, how many people are confident getting back out into the city centre. And we've taken the approach of top priority being give people the confidence, let them know that we are a safe and secure venue, which is the first thing that we went out with. and then diversifying our product, because we know it's not going to be the same as what it was before. So the owners were great, and they commissioned a company to work alongside us during lockdown on a voluntary basis called the Game Changer Project. And we started thinking about how we can differentiate ourselves within the market. What do our clients actually want? What does our new client base look like? So we've spent quite a lot of time in the planning for that. So we've introduced new things such as leisure packages, because we think predominantly that's going to be the people that are most confident. We don't really see corporate coming back. So it's making sure that we've got everything available to the markets that we see returning first. It's going to be tough because we're not experts in that line, but we've got everything in place that we think. We were saying this morning, it's just all about adapting because it's changing every day.
Yeah. I mean, you found me sanding tables on Friday. I did a bit of sanding. Got to adapt. Everyone's in it together. But it's that unknown. It's the unknown now that it's not tangible, and we don't know what that feels like.
Yeah. Thanks very much. And Thomas, just to finish with you, I suppose that's a first summary as well, I suppose, of what you're thinking and experiencing at present. It is unknown that you're going into over the next three to 4 months and longer as well.
Yes, obviously. I was having a conversation with someone the other day about the fact that, you know, I come from South America, and the unknown is a norm, really. You know, the inflation rates are high, and then I grew with my family going through periods like this forever, as far as I can remember. You know, and obviously you learn to adapt. And for me, this is obviously the time for, like, you know, Kirsty was just saying, is about adapting, and adaptation is the key for any business nowadays. The unknown means that you don't know what's in front of you, but it doesn't mean that you don't know who you are. And as long as you are very clear with your core, and you know who you want to be as much as who you are, then it's just a matter of, as a business, continue going and not being scared about what might happen. If the problem is, when there's so many people that depend on you, then making the right calls becomes so heavy, absolutely so heavy. And I feel for everybody that's in here, in this today, listening, or another day, because I know that most of them are, you know, senior business people who have decisions to be made. And when you don't know what the opportunities or the things are, you know, around the corner, how it looks like, it makes it a lot harder to make those decisions. And I just hope that everybody remembers who they really are, their core, and make the calls that are more essentially moral, sometimes not just financial, if possible.
Okay, that's a very, very sobering thought, and quite deep thought as well, and a great thought to finish on, I suppose, really, in these very troubling times as well. So Thomas, Jess, and thank you very much for that, your honesty and your insights as well into that. I think that's probably one of the clearest examples I've certainly heard in conversations over what not just the financial impact, but the human impact of some of this is, over and above what, you know, the fact it is obviously a deadly virus that we're dealing with here, but the human impact goes far beyond the medical bit when it starts to come to this, and probably, unfortunately, will be with us for some time to come. Thank you very much, three of you, for that, and that is really interesting. And what we want to do going forward as we develop these events is also begin to look into other sectors as well, and begin to find out how they're beginning to cope with some of the issues that are coming out, because the issues that we're dealing with now are significantly different from the ones, you know, 3-4 months ago when all this first started. And I just want to bring Subra in now on this. I mentioned it at the start, but over the last couple of days, there's been some really troubling news beginning to come out from Oldham. We had Rochdale a couple of weeks ago, and we're in the middle at the Chamber of putting together our recovery tracker, which is trying to assess the strength of local strength in the economy. But Subra, just picking up on some of the things that has just been heard about, and also looking at what's happening in the news recently. Do you see this, you know, is there a way that we can sort of find out what the impact of some of this will be and act almost before it happens? Or are we just having to react to things yet again?
Thank you, Chris, and good afternoon, everyone. So, so we have had additional restrictions imposed in Oldham yesterday, and that's on the back of restrictions imposed in Rochdale last week, and then Blackburn with Darwin earlier this morning. there are clearly some concerns about a spike in cases in some places. But as of now, and this is the key thing perhaps for now, there is no lockdown yet. And Boris Johnson has certainly ruled out a second national lockdown. At the moment, the restrictions in place primarily affect how residents are meant to behave. So it brings an additional social distancing requirements. So two things then. One is what could be the potential economic impact of these additional measures which have now been imposed, and the second is perhaps looking into what happens if there is a second wave. At the moment, I don't think there will be a massive issue for businesses in Greater Manchester just from these restrictions, and that is not to discount any of the other difficulties that businesses have been facing over the last few months. Because again, as I said, this is about residents and this is people's behavior. The restrictions are on people-to-people contact. It might affect indoor spaces, though. We are talking of the hospitality sector today, so that's where probably there's going to be some impact. A localized lockdown, on the other hand, is going to have a very serious impact, but we don't know the scale of it yet. So our projection for the recovery tracker is this Nike swoosh or tick mark shaped recovery, so slow, gradual, steady increase over the coming few weeks. Now, clearly, there will be some fluctuations in that pattern. What I can see from the recovery tracker, that is the second recovery tracker, which we will publish next week, the data that has been gathered already shows that current sales are on track. So they are roughly in line with the curve going upwards. But we have to keep this. I don't think we can predict a second wave, or what happens in the event of a second wave. And, is it going to be a localized lockdown? Is it just going to be additional restrictions? And until we get clarity, I don't think we can actually model it into an economic narrative.
Okay, thanks. So that was interesting because again, we got challenged the other day about what would a second wave impact look like, and we sort of scratched both our heads and thought, well, we don't know, but it ain't going to be good, And it's things don't look great now when you look at the pace and speed of recovery, but there is that little bit of growth beginning to come back in there. So I suppose that's interesting. We will obviously keep our eyes open on that, and as Subra said, we have got the recovery tracker live now. And we'll be running that for the next couple of weeks, as well as we produce these reports, just to see what speed that recovery is going to come out at overall for Greater Manchester. So things are changing, and they have been changing for some time, haven't they? But it just seems to be now that things are beginning to happen. Listen to the news, and there's all sorts of different talk now about how things are changing. Some better. Things opening up, etc. But obviously there is this big threat in the background. And I think one thing, the takeaway certainly for me today, is that while the hospitality sector is now open, and this weekend more people are going to be encouraged to go back into work, if you scratch beneath the surface, things aren't great actually, and there's still some really, really big challenges coming up, and some really, really big immediate challenges that a lot of businesses are facing now. So that's one thing that's certainly, coming to my mind. Don't get fooled by the great photographs you see in the newspapers. It's happening on your street. It's happening in your neighbourhoods. It's happening as you look out of your window. There's things happening now. Some of it we can influence, some of it we can't, unfortunately. But providing we come together again as that Greater Manchester business community, I think then we stand a fair chance of surviving whatever may come over the next few months. I'd like to finish on a more positive note, but these are very, very tough times. And the only thing I would like to just add in now is that a couple of months ago we started, as you may know, our Greater Manchester business community, which is a free offering for businesses who aren't full members of the Chamber, to offer them the help and support and be able to join networking events like this. And we've just signed up this week our 600th business to join that scheme. So they've been coming in roughly around about 5 a day. So that is really, really good. So that is fantastic news. And again, it's part of what we do as the country's largest Chamber of Commerce, but we've got some fantastic people in business. We've got some fantastic members, and we're bringing new people in all the time to join us and share with us. So if we can leave on some positive news, it's that things are still going in the right direction, slowly but surely. A lot of challenges ahead. But thank you very much for all our speakers today, for Susanna, to Pauline, for Kirsty, Jess and Tomasz as well, and also Subra as well. Thanks very much.